My name is Maya. I'm 28 and last month, I found something in my dad's desk that changed the way I saw my family forever. One stack of papers proved what I tried to ignore for years. My dad never believed in me, but he invested everything in my brother. That moment broke something inside me. And woke something up too. Tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories about family drama, emotional courage, and finding your voice. I always thought the worst pain came from big moments, the loud arguments, the dramatic scenes you see in movies. But I was wrong. Real hurt slips in quietly. It whispers. It shows up in moments so ordinary that you don't understand what's happened until the ground has already shifted under your feet. For me, it started on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember the sunlight coming through the blinds in thin, sharp lines, like the room itself was trying to warn me something was about to change. I had stopped by my parents' house to drop off a grocery list for Mom. She had been feeling tired lately and asked if I could help with shopping. I walked into the house expecting the usual. Dad in the living room watching the news, my brother Luke, heading out for another big meeting that never seemed to lead anywhere. But instead, the house was unusually quiet. I called out, "Mom? Dad?" No reply. Even the air felt still. As I walked toward the kitchen, something caught my eye. Dad's office door was slightly open. Normally, that door stayed shut. Dad treated that room like sacred territory. Growing up, I couldn't enter without knocking, even if the door was open. But today, it sat cracked just enough for curiosity to slip in. And curiosity is a dangerous companion when mixed with years of feeling overlooked. I wish I could say I resisted. I wish I could say I respected boundaries. But I stepped inside. At first glance, everything was in its usual place. Stacks of old manuals, a mug with dusty pens, his small metal filing cabinet. Nothing unusual. But the bottom drawer was pulled out. Papers were scattered across the floor, like someone had rushed through them and left in a hurry. I knelt down, intending to pick up a few loose sheets to avoid trouble. But then I saw my name. Not printed neatly. Handwritten. A small sticky note stuck to the top of a folder labeled Savings. My chest tightened. I wasn't snooping. That's the truth. I wasn't looking for secrets or drama. I just wanted to put the papers back. But when I lifted the folder, another set of papers slid out underneath it. These were thicker. Fresh print. Sharp edges. And the title stopped me cold. Investment Agreement, Luke Thompson, Disbursement Number 3. My brother's name. My father's signature. A total amount in bold letters. $18,000. $18,000. My vision blurred. I blinked hard, thinking I misread the number. I hadn't. I sat back on the carpet slowly, the papers trembling in my hands. I turned the page and there they were, 3 different agreements. All signed. All dated within the last 2 years. All given to my brother. For business development. For startup materials. For consulting and branding. All things Dad insisted he didn't have money for. When I asked for only $500 to start my candle shop, I stared at those papers so long that my legs went numb. A memory slipped in me sitting at the dining table 2 years ago, showing Dad the cost breakdown of starting small, explaining how I could pay him back in a few months. He didn't even look up from his phone. "Maya, you're smart, honey, but business takes a certain kind of mindset. And honestly, it's better if you keep things simple. Leave the serious stuff to your brother." That's what he said. Meanwhile, he was giving Luke thousands behind my back. I didn't hear Dad enter the hallway until he cleared his throat. "What are you doing in here?" His voice wasn't angry. It was flat. Controlled. The way he got when he wanted to redirect a conversation before it turned into something real. I slowly stood, holding the papers. My hands felt cold. "Dad, what is this?" He didn't even glance at them. He walked past me to his desk, picked up the cap of a pen, and adjusted a stack of envelopes like that mattered more than the truth sitting between us. "It's nothing you need to worry about," he said. $18,000? 3 agreements? For Luke. My voice cracked in the middle. "You told me we didn't have money." "That's because we didn't," he snapped suddenly, finally turning to me. "Not for hobby projects. You have your job, Maya. You're fine." A hobby project? I felt something inside me tighten. A small, sharp place that had stayed quiet for too long. I wasn't asking for a loan to buy dresses or go on vacation. I wanted to start a business. Just like Luke. Dad's jaw flexed. Your brother has potential, he said. He's built for these things. You're good at other stuff. Like what? My voice came out too fast, too thin. Like helping mom? Being responsible? Being quiet. He didn't deny it. He just sighed the way people do when they think the other person is being emotional. Maya, you wouldn't understand business struggles. You're different. It's not a bad thing. You're steady. Women are better at stable things. He said it so casually, so calmly, like we were discussing grocery brands. That made it sting more. Before I could speak, Luke stepped in the doorway. His hair was messy, his jacket half-zipped. He looked like he'd been eavesdropping. Dad, did she find out? That sentence hit harder than the papers had. So he knew. He knew all along. He knew Dad dismissed me on purpose. He knew Dad fed him opportunity after opportunity while telling me I wasn't built for it. I felt dizzy. You knew. Luke didn't look proud. Just uncomfortable. Maya, it wasn't my place. It was exactly your place. My voice rose for the first time. I never yelled at my brother growing up, but something snapped. You let him tell me I wasn't good enough while taking everything I ever asked for. Dad stepped in between us. Enough. I won't have shouting in my house. His house. His rules. His choices. I looked at the investment papers one more time. They didn't lie. They didn't make excuses. They didn't sugarcoat the truth. Dad never saw me the way he saw my brother. I wasn't the future of the family. I was the reliable backup plan, the one who didn't rock the boat. The one who didn't need investment because I already had enough. But the truth was simple. I wasn't seen because he never wanted to see me. A quiet heaviness settled over me. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just final. I took a slow breath and stepped back. Okay, I whispered. I understand now. And for the first time I meant it. Dad looked relieved, thinking the conversation was over. But something deeper had just begun inside me. Something he couldn't control. Something he never saw coming. When I walked out of my dad's office that day, the quiet in the house felt different. It wasn't comforting. It wasn't familiar. It felt like a wall had finally cracked. And instead of repairing it, I stepped through it. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't shout anything dramatic. I just walked out with a calmness I didn't fully understand. My hands were still shaking from everything I had seen, but deep down something steady had formed, like a small anchor settling into place. The drive home was slow. Every stoplight felt longer than usual, and every turn felt heavier. When I reached my apartment, I didn't even take off my coat. I set my keys on the counter, leaned my back against the door, and let out a shaky breath. All day I'd held everything in, but once I stood alone in my own space, the truth sank in like a slow wave. Dad never believed in me, and nothing I ever did was going to change that. But accepting that also felt freeing. Painful, yes, but freeing. I walked to my tiny dining table and sat down, staring at the notebook where I kept every idea for my candle business, sketches, cost lists, notes about scents and branding. For months I'd kept that notebook tucked away like a silly dream, something not serious, something Dad would call a distraction. But now it didn't look silly at all. It looked like the only thing in my life that belonged entirely to me. I opened it and placed my palm on the first page. The thought that came next was quiet, almost gentle. If you won't invest in me, then I'll invest in myself. That night I didn't fall apart. I didn't get angry. I didn't call anyone. I simply opened my laptop and started calculating how much money I'd need to start in the smallest way possible. I wasn't thinking about competition or sales. I wasn't thinking about success on a big scale. I just wanted one thing: independence. I picked up a late-night shift at the grocery store the very next day. The manager, a kind older woman named Carol, asked if I was sure I wanted extra hours. "It's tiring, sweetheart," she said. "Don't wear yourself out." "I'll be okay," I told her. And I meant it. My days fell into a new rhythm. Exhausting but strangely refreshing. I would work my regular shift at the office from 8 to 4, grab a quick snack, and walk straight to the grocery store to stock shelves, mop aisles, and handle late-night customers. I wasn't ashamed of the work. It was honest. It was grounding. It was giving me the freedom Dad never thought I deserved. After those shifts, I'd come home smelling like cardboard and cleaning spray, kick off my shoes, and sit at the kitchen counter melting wax on the old stove. The process felt comforting, like therapy. I'd watch the wax soften slowly, then stir in scents I'd saved up for months. Lavender, vanilla, sandalwood, apple spice. The scents mixed into the air, making the apartment feel warm even when everything inside me felt tired. The first night I poured candles into recycled jars, old spaghetti sauce jars, pickle jars, anything friends at work donated. I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I labeled them by hand with cheap sticker sheets from the dollar store. My handwriting wasn't perfect, but I stayed patient and steady. I stayed focused. It was quiet work, slow work, but it was mine. One night, around midnight, my neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Green, knocked on my door. She was in her 70s and always wore soft sweaters that smelled like peppermint tea. "I heard clinking," she said, peeking inside. "Thought you might have dropped something." I laughed softly and showed her the small batch of candles drying on the counter. "Just trying something new." She leaned in a little, took a gentle sniff of one, and smiled. "Oh, honey, these smell better than the ones I buy at the mall." My cheeks warmed. "Thank you. I'm still experimenting." "You should sell them," she said, tapping my arm lightly. "People love things made with care." Her words stuck with me. After she left, I sat on the couch staring at those jars for a long time. I didn't feel ambitious or bold. I just felt capable. It was a feeling I rarely got at home. Within 2 weeks, I had enough candles to sell a small batch. I took pictures using my phone near a sunny window, hoping the lighting wouldn't betray me. I created a simple online shop through a free website builder, struggling through templates and color choices until the page finally looked presentable. For the first time in my life, I launched something without asking for approval. To my surprise, a few coworkers bought candles right away. One woman, Jenna, ordered 3. She walked up to me in the break room holding her bag like it was something special. "Maya, these are amazing," she said with a grin. "I'm gonna need 10 more for gifts." My throat tightened. Not with sadness. Something else. Something warm. That night when I got home, I cried a little, quiet tears that came from relief, not disappointment. Someone believed in my work. Someone who didn't carry the weight of family history or expectations. Someone who saw value in what I created with my own 2 hands. From there, things grew slowly. Every payday, I set aside $20 for supplies. Wax, wick, fragrance oils, labels, packaging. I kept everything as simple as possible. I repurposed every jar I could find. Coffee jars, jam jars, glass cups from thrift stores. Friends started dropping off boxes of empty jars on my porch. One coworker, Mark, even collected jars from his neighbors. "For your business," he said proudly. "Don't worry, they're clean." I worked late into the night, listening to soft music or quiet podcasts, letting the scents fill the apartment. Whenever exhaustion crept in, I reminded myself that I wasn't working to prove anything to Dad. I was working to build something for myself. One night, while carrying a tray of candles to the fridge to help them set faster, I bumped my elbow on the counter and almost dropped everything. Hot wax sloshed onto the floor. I froze, heart pounding. "Oh no," I whispered. Cleaning it was messy, sticky, annoying. I sat on the floor for 10 minutes afterward, just breathing, trying not to let frustration undo the progress I'd made. But instead of quitting, I adjusted my setup. I rearranged my small kitchen, created a designated space, and bought a cheap tray to avoid spills. Small solutions. Practical ones. Each change made me feel steadier. One afternoon at the grocery store, as I restocked cereal boxes, a customer approached me to ask where the baking aisle was. She held one of my candles in her other hand. I recognized it immediately, lavender sage. "Where did you get that?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Oh, at the little market downtown," she said cheerfully. A lady was selling local goods. "These candles are wonderful." My heart skipped. Someone had resold my candle. Someone thought it was good enough to share with others. That quiet discovery lit something inside me that no encouragement from Dad could have given me. A sense of worth coming not from pleasing someone, but creating something real and useful. By the end of the next month, I had a small side income. Nothing life-changing, but enough to cover groceries and part of my rent. Enough to feel the shift inside me growing stronger. One evening, my mom called while I was labeling jars. "Hello, sweetheart," she said softly. "Haven't heard from you much." "I've been busy," I answered, trying to keep my tone light. "Work in a projects." She hesitated. "Your father told me you seemed upset that day." I paused. The memory flashed, the office, the papers, his expression. But I swallowed it down gently. "I'm fine, Mom. Just focusing on what I can build." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm proud of you, Maya." Her voice wavered. "Even if your father doesn't always show it." I didn't respond right away. My throat tightened. I stared down at the candle I was holding, the fresh label slightly crooked. "Thank you," I whispered. It was the first time in a long time I felt seen by someone at home. As days passed, my routine settled into something steady and dependable. Work, candle making, sleep, repeat. I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I wasn't trying to change anyone's mind. I was simply building something with care, with patience, with a quiet kind of determination that surprised even me. There were nights I wanted to collapse into bed instead of melting wax. Nights when my feet ached from standing, and my wrists hurt from pouring. Nights when I questioned whether I should slow down. But each time, I'd remember standing in Dad's office with those papers in my hands. That moment didn't break me, it built a door. And now I was walking through it step by step. Not with anyone's permission. Not with anyone's funding. Just with my own 2 hands. By the time the month ended, my apartment smelled like a mix of vanilla and citrus and lavender. Every scent blending into something warm and familiar. Something that felt like hope. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was steering my own path, one candle at a time. I had barely finished cleaning up the last few boxes of materials from my tiny workshop when my phone buzzed with 3 missed calls from Dad back to back. All within minutes. My stomach tightened. Dad never called like that unless something was terribly wrong, and even then he usually called my brother first. The sudden urgency didn't feel like an emergency. It felt like trouble. I wiped the sawdust off my hands, took a breath and called him back. He answered immediately. "Maya, get home. Now." His voice wasn't shaky or frightened. It was disappointed. Heavy. The kind of tone he used whenever he had already decided who was at fault before he even heard the full story. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "No," he replied sharply. "Just come." He hung up. I stood there for a moment, letting the quiet workshop settle around me again. Tools lined up, half-finished pieces drying on the table, orders in neat little stacks. All the hard work I had been building, brick by brick, felt suddenly overshadowed by a familiar dread. My brother. It had to be him. Something of his must have gone wrong again. And somehow Dad already had a way to make it land on me. When I reached home, the living room was a storm of tension. My brother, Ethan, sat slouched on the couch, elbows on his knees, head buried in his hands. He didn't even look up when I walked in. Dad paced across the room, his hands behind his back like he was walking through a problem that had no solution. Mom stood near the dining table, arms crossed, trying to look neutral but failing miserably. She gave me a small nod, one of those silent warnings that meant brace yourself. "What happened?" I asked, my eyes moving between all 3 of them. Dad stopped pacing. "Maya," he began, "did you know anything about this?" He tossed a stack of papers on the coffee table. I stepped closer and scanned the top page. It was a bank notice. A big one. Ethan had defaulted on a small business loan. Not a loan from my business, his. A loan I didn't even know he had taken. My heart dropped. "Dad, I didn't even know he applied for anything." Ethan finally lifted his head. His eyes were red, not from crying but from exhaustion or frustration. "Maya, don't start," he murmured. "Don't start what?" I asked. "I just walked in." Dad raised a hand. "Enough. This is serious. And before things get worse, I need answers." I blinked. "Answers from me?" "Yes, from you," he snapped. "Your brother wouldn't have gone through with something like this if he didn't feel pressured." My mouth fell open. Pressured? By who? "Dad, I barely see him these days." Dad folded his arms. He said he felt behind. Like he had to prove himself. Like you were getting ahead too fast. I stared at Ethan. He didn't deny it. He just looked down again. So now my hard work, my late nights, my scraped knuckles, my growing order lists, Was the reason he made reckless financial decisions? Mom stepped closer, gently touching Dad's arm. Maybe we should slow down and listen. No, Dad said firmly. I know my son. He wouldn't have taken a loan without guidance. Then he looked at me. Did you encourage him? I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the most unbelievable thing I'd heard all year. Dad, I didn't even know he wanted to start anything. He never talked to me about a business. Ethan muttered under his breath. Why would I? You'd make me feel stupid. That's not fair, I shot back. I never made you feel that way. You didn't have to, he said quietly. You just kept moving forward, and Dad kept comparing us. The room went silent. Dad stiffened, his jaw tightening. I did no such thing, Mom whispered. Actually, sometimes you did, honey. He glared at her, but she didn't back down. Ethan finally sat up. Dad, you never let me try things without rescuing me when they fell apart. I thought maybe if I just did something on my own, it would finally make you proud. I exhaled. So you took out a loan you couldn't handle? And now Dad thinks I had something to do with it. Dad stepped forward. The bank mentioned you helped him before. Helped him how? I asked. What did I supposedly help with? Dad pointed at the papers again. They said his business proposal included examples of successful small-scale home operations, which sounds exactly like your workshop. I closed my eyes for a moment. So Ethan had used my work, my progress, my ideas as evidence that he could pull it off too. Without asking. Without understanding the months of tough days I had endured. Dad, I said, opening my eyes again. I had nothing to do with the proposal. I didn't guide him. I didn't encourage him. I didn't even know. He didn't budge. Well, regardless, you're part of this now. I frowned. How? Because the bank suggested that you might be able to help him get back on track, since your small business is stable. I stepped back. No, absolutely not. Ethan looked up, eyes pleading. Maya, listen. No, I repeated. This is your responsibility, Ethan. I worked for everything I have. I stayed up nights. I budgeted every dollar. I bought every tool out of pocket. I didn't ask anyone for help. Dad crossed his arms, unmoved. Your family. You should help each other. And when have I ever been the one helped? I asked quietly. Dad didn't answer. Mom looked at me gently, as if silently acknowledging the truth I had been carrying for years. But the storm wasn't done. A few days later, Ethan showed up at my workshop. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, looking smaller than usual. Can we talk? He asked. I didn't look up from sanding the wooden tray I was working on. About what? About everything. I didn't say no, so he walked in. He picked up one of the finished pieces from the shelf. You're really good at this, he said softly. Thanks. I didn't expect the loan to fall apart, he added. And I didn't expect to get blamed for it, I said, finally meeting his eyes. He swallowed. I didn't mean for Dad to drag you into it. He just misunderstood. No, I corrected gently. He didn't misunderstand. He just didn't want to admit you made a mistake. It was easier to assume I had something to do with it. Ethan nodded slowly, guilt settling on his face. So what are you going to do? I asked. He shrugged. I don't know. I tried reaching out to a guy Dad knows, but he said he can't help unless Dad signs as a guarantor. And Dad's not ready to do that again. I paused. What exactly did you plan on selling? I asked. Ethan hesitated. I wanted to start a small phone repair shop. I blinked. Ethan, you don't even like fixing phones. He ran a hand through his hair. I know. But Dad said it's a man's job and easier than the creative stuff you do. He said it would give me a foothold. My jaw tightened. So Dad had encouraged him secretly, while telling me every day that my work was a hobby at best. And you went along with it because? Because I wanted him to stop comparing me to you, he whispered. The words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't know my success, quiet, steady, and painfully earned, had made him feel so threatened. You should have talked to me, I said. I know. I was embarrassed. We stood in silence for a moment until I finally said, I'll help you figure out your next step. Not with money, but maybe we can find a way to repay what you owe slowly. Ethan nodded, relief washing over him. Thanks, Maya. But, I added firmly, you have to be the one who owns the mistake. Not me. I will, he said. That evening Dad showed up at my workshop. He didn't knock, he just walked in. His expression was stiff, guarded, almost defensive. So, he began, your brother says you two talked. Yes, I replied, not pausing my work. That was good of you. I didn't do it for you, I said quietly. I did it because Ethan needed clarity. He stepped closer. I want to make something clear too. I braced myself. You may think I'm hard on you, he said. But that's only because I know you can handle it. I finally looked up. Dad, that's not a compliment. That's neglect. He blinked, thrown off by the directness. You're strong, Maya. And he isn't? Is that what you think? Dad didn't respond. You supported him through everything, I continued. Every mistake, every wrong turn, every impulsive decision. You gave him chances I never even knew existed. I was trying to help him succeed. And I was trying to prove I could succeed without anyone's help, I said. But you didn't notice because you never expected me to get this far. He inhaled sharply. Maya, I never meant to make you feel invisible. But you did, I whispered. Silence filled the room, thick and painful. Dad shifted uncomfortably. So what now? Now, I said gently but firmly, Ethan and I will figure out his mess. Not because you said to, but because he asked for help honestly. Dad nodded slowly. And you, I continued, need to stop blaming me for things I didn't do. I'm your daughter, not your backup plan. He lowered his gaze. For the first time in a long while, he didn't argue. He didn't deflect. He didn't pretend. He just stood there, quiet, humbled, and maybe for the first time listening. That night, as I locked up my workshop and stepped into the cool air, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not resentment. Something calmer, clearer. For years, I tried to earn Dad's approval without realizing I'd been carrying the weight of his expectations, his disappointment, his comparisons on my shoulders. And now, for the first time, I had set that weight down. Ethan had his mess to clean up. Dad had his reflection to face. And I had my own path. One I built with my own hands. And no amount of blame could ever take that away from me. The next morning, I woke to the familiar smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. But the comfort I normally felt from that aroma was gone. My chest felt tight, my stomach heavy, and my hands trembled slightly as I stretched. Something inside me whispered that today wouldn't be ordinary. I brushed it off at first, blaming the restless night spent labeling new candles, but a small knot in my stomach refused to untangle. I walked into my little workshop to check on my accounts, the place where I kept track of every cent I had scraped together, every sale I'd made, every penny that represented nights I'd gone without sleep and weekends I'd spent melting wax and hand-pouring jars. I opened my laptop, the light from the screen cutting through the early morning shadows, and froze. The bank account I had been nurturing for months, the account that held my business savings, was lower than it had been the day before. Way lower. I clicked through the transactions, heart hammering, and then saw it. A withdrawal. Not small. Not an accident. A withdrawal of $5,200, all traced directly to Dad. I felt like someone had punched me square in the chest. The air left my lungs in a sharp hiss. My hand shook as I scrolled through the description. Family assistance, Ethan Thompson. Ethan's name was there, yes, but it wasn't him who had taken it. It was Dad. My father. The same man who had dismissed me, who had never believed in me, who had insisted that my ambitions were just hobbies. He had taken the money I had painstakingly earned to cover my brother's reckless mistake. I sank onto my kitchen chair, my mind spinning. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process it at first. All the quiet effort, every late night and early morning, every bit of energy I had poured into building something of my own, it had been plucked away while I slept, while I trusted my family. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I slammed the laptop shut and ran out of the apartment, the cold morning air hitting my face like a slap. I drove to the corner coffee shop where I often went to gather my thoughts. I didn't order anything. I just sat at a corner table, gripping my mug as if it were a lifeline. I couldn't stop thinking about the betrayal. The anger was sharp, but beneath it was something heavier. Grief. I realized with a sinking feeling that Dad's favoritism wasn't just passive. It was active, and it had real consequences. He hadn't just ignored me. He had taken from me to prop up my brother. When I finally returned home, I found Ethan sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up, sensing my mood. "Something wrong?" he asked. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him, to make him feel a fraction of the betrayal I felt. But I didn't. I took a deep breath and said quietly, "Dad took my savings, my business money, to pay for your debt." Ethan's eyes widened. "What? That can't be legal." "It's not about legality," I said bitterly. "It's about trust. It's about respect. He doesn't respect me. He doesn't see me as capable. And now he's taken what I earned to save what you failed at." Ethan's face fell, guilt and shock washing over him. "Maya, I didn't ask him to." "I know," I interrupted, my voice rising. "But that doesn't matter. He still did it. And now I have to figure out how to fix what he broke. Again. Just like I always have to fix what gets messed up at home, while everyone else gets a free pass." Ethan stayed quiet, staring at the floor. I could tell he felt guilty, but it wasn't his fault entirely. It was Dad's. Always Dad's. I went straight to my workshop, trying to focus on anything, but everything I touched felt wrong. My hand shook as I handled the wax. I poured a batch of vanilla candles, then stopped halfway, staring at the liquid in the melting pot. The aroma, which had always been soothing, now felt heavy. Every scent reminded me of the money Dad had taken, the money that had allowed me to buy the wax, the jars, the fragrance oils. I realized then that my breaking point wasn't just about money. It was about recognition, respect, the simple understanding that what I had built mattered. That my labor, my effort, my dedication was worth more than just being a backup plan for the people Dad truly cared about. I called Mom later that evening, needing someone to talk to. Her voice was gentle on the phone, but the tremor in her words betrayed her. "Maya, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I tried to stop him. I really did. But he thinks he's protecting the family." "Protecting the family?" I echoed bitterly. "By taking what was mine? By handing everything I earned to Ethan?" Mom didn't answer immediately. I could hear her sigh on the other end. "I know it's wrong, sweetheart. I know it is. And I hate that you're the one who always bears the brunt of it. I've seen it. I've always seen it. But he refuses to listen." "I can't keep doing this, Mom," I said, my voice tight. "I can't keep being the one who works hard, stays up nights, and still gets punished for their mistakes while everyone else gets rewarded for theirs." "You don't have to," she said softly. "Not forever." Her words lingered in my mind, like a fragile light in the darkness. I didn't know how long it would take, but I realized I had a choice. I could let this destroy me, or I could channel the betrayal, the anger, the grief into something stronger. The next day I visited the bank. I explained the situation politely but firmly. They told me there was nothing they could do. The withdrawal had been authorized by a family member. A family member who happened to have Dad's signature. I left the bank feeling powerless, a strange mix of fury and disbelief twisting inside me. Back at home I confronted Dad. He was sitting in the living room, sipping his coffee as if nothing had happened. "Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "you took my business savings. You gave my money to Ethan." He didn't look up. "I did what had to be done. He needed the help." "No," I said sharply, stepping closer. "You needed to save him. You didn't need to destroy me in the process. This was mine. Every cent. I earned it. And you just took it." He finally looked at me, his expression hard. "It was temporary. He'll pay it back." "Temporary," I repeated, my voice shaking. "You don't understand. That money was for my supplies, my orders, my growth. Without it, everything I've been building is at risk. Do you even care about that?" "I care about the family," he said, standing up now, tension radiating off him. "Sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good." "The greater good?" I laughed bitterly. "The greater good is taking from me, the one person who never asked for anything from you, to bail out someone who's failed every chance he's had? That's your idea of good." He didn't answer. I realized then that words weren't enough. Dad didn't see the damage he caused. He didn't care enough to see it. He only cared about controlling outcomes. And for the first time, I didn't need his approval or understanding. I turned and left the room. I felt the weight in my chest begin to lift slightly, replaced with a steely determination. If he wanted to take my money, fine. But he would never take my resolve. He could never take my hands, my energy, my creativity, or the countless nights I had poured into my small business. That night, I stayed in the workshop longer than usual. I poured wax with precision, crafted new labels, and packaged candles with a quiet ferocity. Each candle became a symbol, not just of my labor, but of my refusal to be sidelined, overlooked, or stolen from. Ethan came in later looking sheepish. "Maya, I'm really sorry. I didn't know Dad would." "I know," I said, not looking up. "But this isn't about apologies. This is about boundaries. You have to fix your mess without dragging me down." He nodded, understanding the finality in my voice. "I will. I promise." After he left, I sank into the chair, exhausted but oddly invigorated. The breaking point had come. Dad had taken what was mine. But for the first time, I understood that breaking points could also be beginnings. I couldn't stop thinking about all the small victories I had built. Every candle, every sale, every positive comment from a customer. They were mine. And while Dad had temporarily disrupted my plans, he hadn't touched that. He couldn't. That night I made a decision I would rebuild. Slowly, carefully, and on my terms. I would find new ways to fund supplies, reach customers, and grow my small business without relying on anyone who didn't see my worth. And I would never let anyone, no matter how close, take that away from me again. As I turned off the lights and stepped out onto the balcony, the city lights blinking softly below, I realized something profound. Betrayal could sting. It could wound deeply. But it could also ignite a strength I didn't know I had. Dad had tried to break me. He had taken what was mine to save what was his. But in doing so, he had shown me something I might never have learned otherwise. That I am stronger than his favoritism, stronger than his bias, and stronger than anyone who doubts me just because of my gender. The night air felt crisp, carrying away some of the anger, leaving determination in its place. I clenched my fists and whispered softly to myself, "This ends here. I will not be taken for granted. I will not be dismissed. I will rise on my own terms." And with that, I went back inside, lit a candle, and let its gentle glow fill the room. It was a small light, but it felt enough to guide me forward. Stronger, wiser, and finally free from the weight of what Dad had taken. The early morning sunlight filtered through the small blinds of my workshop, spilling across the counters lined with freshly poured candles, each one a testament to nights I had spent alone, working to rebuild what Dad had taken. The soft golden light made the wax glow faintly, like tiny flames of resilience flickering back at me. I breathed in the subtle mix of vanilla, lavender, and citrus and felt a rare deep calm. For the first time in months, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Every order that had come in over the last few weeks wasn't just money. It was recognition, tangible proof that my efforts mattered. That I, Maya, could stand on my own. I was arranging a new batch of jars when my phone buzzed. I rarely kept it on the table anymore, preferring the quiet of concentration, but this time I noticed the number immediately. It was my father. I froze, heart tightening. I hadn't spoken to him since the confrontation over my stolen savings. I wasn't planning to, but somehow instinctively I picked up. "Maya." His voice came through low, hesitant. There was none of the usual certainty or authority. It sounded small. "What do you want, Dad?" I asked, keeping my tone calm though my pulse raced. There was a pause. I could almost hear him weighing his words. I need help," he said finally. I sat down, my hands trembling slightly as the phone felt heavy in my grasp. For months, Dad had dismissed me, ignored my achievements, taken from me to shield my brother from consequences he should have faced himself. And now he was asking for help. From me. What kind of help? I asked cautiously, sensing the gravity behind his words. "It's Ethan," he admitted, voice rough. "He's in trouble again. Not the bank this time, but he's overextended, and the business he's trying to start, it's failing. I don't know how to fix it." I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment. Months of anger, frustration, and exhaustion washed over me. Every memory of being ignored, every late night of work that Dad had treated as inconsequential, Every small victory that had gone unnoticed, it all came rushing back. And yet, beneath it was something else. A quiet, controlled clarity. "You want me to fix it?" I asked, my voice measured. "Yes," he said. I don't know what else to do." I took a slow breath. "Dad, this isn't about what I can do anymore. This is about respect. About responsibility. I'm not your safety net. I'm not a backup plan. And I'm not going to be treated like my worth is secondary to Ethan's mistakes." Another long pause. Then, "I know, Maya." Don't," I said firmly. "Not yet. I'll consider helping, but not on your terms. Not until I know everyone involved takes responsibility. That includes Ethan and you." He didn't respond immediately. Finally, he muttered, "I understand. I'll tell him." The next day, Ethan showed up at my workshop looking anxious. He was holding a stack of papers in his hands, which I assumed were related to his business plan. When he saw me, his shoulders slumped further. "Hey," he said quietly. Dad told me you might help." I studied him carefully. This was the same brother I had watched stumble through failed ventures for years while Dad rescued him without question. But I could see something different now. Fear, yes, but also recognition of his mistakes. "You should have fixed your own problems before asking me," I said, my voice steady but edged with warning. "I know," he admitted, dropping the papers onto my workbench. "I screwed up. Bad. And Dad, he doesn't understand the details. He just wants it solved." I glanced at the papers. Revenue projections, expense sheets, supplier contacts. He had attempted a small local delivery business, and it had gone south quickly. Mistakes compounded, orders mishandled, debts mounting. This was no longer a simple oversight. It was a mess that could have destroyed him entirely. "You know I'll help," I said finally. "But we're doing it right. Every step. No shortcuts. No blaming anyone but yourself for the mistakes this time." Ethan nodded, relief washing over his face. He knew he couldn't manipulate me the way he had manipulated Dad. Not now. We spent the day in my workshop side by side. I guided him through budgeting his supplies properly, setting realistic goals for inventory, and prioritizing customer satisfaction. I showed him how to communicate honestly with clients about delays, how to track every order meticulously, how to anticipate problems instead of scrambling when they appeared. First he resisted. Old habits die hard. But slowly he began to listen. Not out of fear of Dad or obligation to me, but because he could see the consequences clearly for the first time. Every misstep had cost him, and now every piece of advice I offered could save him. Hours passed, the sun moving from a soft morning glow to a golden afternoon light, and the workshop was filled with the sound of careful discussions, the clinking of jars, and the quiet concentration of two people working toward a shared goal. At one point, Ethan paused, looking around at the neatly organized workspace, the labeled jars, the tidy counters. "Maya," he said softly, almost in awe. All this, you built it all yourself?" I smiled faintly, but it wasn't the warm pride I had felt months ago. It was steadier now, harder, tempered by the past months of betrayal and struggle. Every bit of it. Nights I stayed up alone. Weeks I sacrificed. Money I earned myself. And Dad didn't even notice until he needed it for you. Ethan winced, looking down. I didn't know. I just assumed. I don't know. I didn't think." "You didn't think," I said firmly. "Exactly. That's why we're doing this the right way now. No assumptions. No taking what isn't yours. No shortcuts. And I don't want anyone else interfering. This is about your responsibility, not Dad's, and certainly not mine." He nodded, the weight of the lesson settling in. "I get it, Maya. I really do. I'm sorry for everything." "I know you are," I said. "Now let's focus on what comes next." We worked late into the evening, breaking down his orders, analyzing suppliers, recalculating pricing, and making realistic promises to clients. By the time we stepped out of the workshop, the night sky was painted with stars, the cool air sharp against our skin. Ethan's usual bravado was gone. He looked humbled, aware for the first time of what it meant to build something from the ground up without relying on someone else's safety net. The next morning Dad called again. His tone was tentative this time, almost nervous. "Maya, I see you're helping Ethan," he said. "Yes," I replied. But only because he's taking responsibility. And only on my terms. He hesitated. I just wanted to say, thank you. I laughed softly, shaking my head. You don't get to thank me. You had years to notice my work, to support me, to treat me fairly. That didn't happen. I did this for me and Ethan. Not for you. There was silence on the line. Finally he muttered, I understand. I'll try to do better. Good, I said, hanging up. The first time it wasn't anger I felt. It wasn't even relief. It was something steadier, closure. In the weeks that followed, Ethan's business slowly stabilized. He made fewer mistakes, delivered orders on time, and communicated honestly with clients. Each small success reinforced the lessons I had taught him. And for the first time he began to truly respect the effort it took to run something independently, the patience, the planning, the sacrifices. Meanwhile, I continued to grow my own business. Every candle I poured, every order I shipped, every positive note from a client became a quiet affirmation of my worth. Dad's absence of recognition no longer mattered. I wasn't doing it for his approval anymore. I was doing it because I had earned the right to stand on my own. One afternoon, Ethan came into my workshop carrying 2 fresh orders. He looked at me with a tentative smile. Maya, I just wanted to say, I couldn't have done this without you. I mean it. I smiled faintly, feeling warmth but holding back tears. You could have, I said gently. You just needed guidance. You needed to learn accountability. And now you have it. Don't forget it. He nodded solemnly. I won't. That evening, as I cleaned up the workspace, I realized something profound. The day Dad had taken my money, I had thought my spirit would break. I had imagined losing everything I had worked for. And yet, standing here, seeing both my business and Ethan's small venture moving forward under proper guidance, I understood the lesson I had learned all along. My strength wasn't dependent on Dad's approval, my success wasn't defined by him, and my ability to rise wasn't diminished by someone else's mistakes. For the first time, I felt completely free. Free from expectation. Free from blame. Free from favoritism and the long shadow of a parent who couldn't see me as I truly was. I sat on the floor, surrounded by jars and labels, breathing in the sweet scents of the candles I had poured, and smiled. I had finally stood on my own. And for the first time, when someone came asking for help, someone who had always assumed I would be there, I could choose to give it, to guide them, to help them grow. Not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. And that choice, made from strength and clarity, was more powerful than anything Dad had ever taken from me. I had learned finally that standing on my own didn't mean I had to do everything alone. It meant I had the power to choose who to support, how to support them, and on what terms. And that was worth more than any candle, any jar, any dollar I had ever earned. The night settled over the city, stars twinkling softly above. I lit one of my new candles and let the warm glow fill the workshop. It felt like more than light, it felt like home. Like victory. Like the quiet triumph of a woman who had been underestimated, overlooked, and taken for granted, and had risen anyway. And in that glow, I whispered to myself, steady and resolute, I am enough. I always have been. Now, I am unstoppable.